Welcome to another episode of the Twins Talking Up podcast. Do you know the difference between powerlifting and weightlifting? What does that have to do with your organization and your journey? Knowing your niche and what you specialize in can make all the difference in succeeding in your sector. Even if it's not winning a world title or a championship, like our next guest. Today, we're thrilled to welcome Adam Kerrigan, Vice President at the Corum Group. Now, Adam has a fascinating journey, and we're really excited to tell you about it because his journey involves powerlifting. He is a powerlifting champion. And being a leader in merger and acquisition space is something that all of our members would like to know. And because we brought this special guest on, we know you're going to lean in and you're going to say, tell me more. Now, you may not be able to break his record. We can all strive to surpass our own personal and our own organizational best. But we have a great guest, and I know he's going to give us some insights on M&A and, of course, in powerlifting. Adam, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you, Danny, Dave. Good to see you both again. Thanks for having me.
Adam, it's going to be an incredible conversation. I've been looking forward to this for some time now. But before we dive into your professional journey and talking about the work that you do to help organizations get prepared to either acquire an organization, merge with an organization, or maybe they're just thinking about selling, I want to talk about your history, what you're doing. It's not just a hobby. As a powerlifting champion, how did you get into it? Do people ever confuse powerlifting with just weightlifting? And what are some of your biggest achievements in the sport?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, so powerlifting gets confused very often with weightlifting, with bodybuilding, and to the general public, they're kind of all the same thing, right? They're like, "Oh, Adam, you must get up on stage in the little skimpy, swimsuit and all that stuff." I was like, "No, no, no, that is definitely not me." Powerlifting specifically is comprised of three lifts. It's the squat, the bench press, and the deadlift. And you're correct. I've been competing. I really fell into the sport completely by chance. I was in 2016, extremely unhealthy, very overweight, and a near drowning accident actually kind of inspired me to really change my life for the better. And so I started going to the gym, and really just that was this external event that really changed me. I started going to the gym consistently. And then about 6 months after I started going, I met this fantastic group of people who I saw putting up massive weight. And I worked up the courage one day to ask them, "Hey, can I work in with you guys?" And totally expected them to reject me. And they said, "No, man, come on. We'd love to have you." And we are still training to this day. They are a huge aspect of my success there. But I've been competing now since I first competed in 2018. I've competed now for 6 years. I have taken 4 national titles. I competed in the 2021 World Championship. I took gold there. And at last year's national championship, I set a world deadlift record of 622.8 pounds.
This is Danny. Look, I'm going to tell people that is phenomenal. I don't know about you, but lifting that much weight it's unreal. It is so unreal. I can't even imagine it. I'm thinking I can't complain when I go work out with the guys every day of the week. So we do our workouts in the morning at 6 in the morning every day. And Harry say, bring the weighted vest, put 14 pounds on. I'm complaining. I'm like, oh my gosh, that and 45-pound curl weights. This is too heavy. Everything's too heavy. But the mindset you have to have in order to break that world record has to be phenomenal. And I know we're going to get into that mindset in a minute, but tell me a little bit, how has that mindset to push through to tell yourself I can lift this when you know it's a huge insurmountable amount? How has that mindset actually also helped you in your career in mergers and acquisition? Because I think there's got to be something that tells you I can do it, and then your body acts, because the mind has to start first and the body acts. So what was that mindset? And then the second question I have to ask is, do you have a routine or something that's ritual that you do before you lift? I know some
Mm.
football players or some athletes, LeBron James will put the baby pound in the hand, he does this and throws it up in the air, but everyone has to have something to get their mind focused, to get their body ready. So what was that mindset that you had that helped you in the mergers acquisition space? And then number two, do you have a little tick or do you have a little routine to get you ready to lift those heavy weights?
Yeah, so absolutely right. So mindset is enormous, right? I think for myself, as I've gotten older and more mature, I'm 44 today. It's one of those things that I've done a lot of maturing over the last couple of years. And I think that competing in a sport, an individual sport, has been a big part of that. Growing up, I was, my parents had me in baseball and football and soccer and all these team-based sports. And there was for me, it was always kind of a struggle. Like in my mind, it's like, hey, somebody's got to win, somebody's got to lose. And that was just, there's this natural tension there, right? Well, in an individual sport like powerlifting, it's me competing against myself. Now, technically, I'm competing against the other guys in my weight class, but the way I was able to view it in my mind is I'm up there to do my very best every single time, win or lose. There's people cheering for me. And so at the national championship, I compete with, or I train with 4 or 5 guys consistently. And so typically before we come out onto the platform, we do a couple of things. We chalk up our hands. I don't do the whole LeBron thing, but we do like this thing where we slap each other on the back really hard, and it kind of dumps adrenaline into your system. And what's interesting about that particular lift is I also set a personal best on squat. I hit 540 earlier that day. And those both, the 540 squat and the 622 deadlift, were the first time I'd ever hit those, never even in the gym.
Wow.
It was just totally in the zone. My eating was on point, my energy was right, like all these things aligned, and I just went for it. And frankly, even stepping onto the platform, I was questioning, am I going to get this? But as soon as I started pulling on that bar, I was like, this is going up. And sure enough, it did.
This is David, Adam, and I love that. You were relentless in your focus. There was nothing that was going to deter you from getting that done. And I think that's amazing. And I think there's a lot to be said about how you can apply that even to the business world, being a professional, being a business owner. But it's not just about brute strength, it's also about the technical capabilities, making sure you're doing it in the right manner so you don't pull you back out, whether it's wearing the belt, putting the chalk on, whatever the routine is for you, the slapping on the back to get you going. And you talk about adrenaline, it could just be that sense of reassurance. Hey, I've got this. I've got support behind me. And so it makes me start to think we're not in this by ourselves. Even when we achieve the greatest goals that we have, even when we go and surpass our expectations, whether you're in business or in the sport, powerlifting, you've got to have that support behind you. I want to ask you before we get into your world in terms of what you're doing
Mhm.
in M&A and everything else, talk about the importance of having that support system. You said you still work out with the same guys, the same people that still believe in you. Maybe you didn't see it in yourself, but they saw it in you. You knew at the end of the day you had to hit the goal, but they saw that already as well. Talk about the importance of that, because it's not just about having people in your life in that capacity, but it's also about having those champions with you, those allies, those advocates in your business world as well.
Yeah, so I'll talk broader, and you're 100% right. One of the things that surprised me most about the powerlifting community is the very first time in December of 2018 when I went to compete, my full expectation was I was going to go in there and it was going to be a ton of people with ego and bravado and just a lot of that kind of mentality, right? And what shocked me, it was the complete opposite. People were so supportive and welcoming, and it was such a turnout. It really pulled me into the community, and it's what really fed that desire. And although I was training with those 4 or 5 guys at the time, I was the only one that competed. Funny enough, they all said they're going to sign up. I was the only one that signed up for the meet. And they regretted it because it was the first meet we'd all gone to, and we really all got pulled in, and we're still all competing to this day. But then specifically the people that I met at the gym, those guys that I got brave and went up and asked them if I could work in, I think having a great support system around us, right, to continue to pull us in and encourage us. I still train with these guys to this day. Every weekend, Saturday and Sunday, we're there 8 a.m. training, rain or shine. And and for me, I think it's been a big part of what has led me to continue to be successful in my training, in my competition. And that's, we have a saying, iron sharpens iron. And it's really, we are there to support each other. Don't get me wrong, we love to rib each other and love to joke and insult each other, as guys tend to sometimes do. But at the end of the day, it's really forged some extremely strong relationships. And within myself, it's really helped carve out who I am as an individual and as a man.
This is Danny. I really appreciate you breaking that down. And as Dave said, is even if you're doing an individual sport, you're not alone. You have a big support network. And I also found it interesting. Sometimes we get, I don't know about Dave, but sometimes we get into a group with a whole bunch of people. We're waiting to say who's going to do it first, who's going to go, who's going to do it first, who's going to do it first. Okay, we're all doing this together, but someone has to jump first. Someone has to do it first, and you went and did it. This is interesting because when we come to having a leader, and a lot of people that we work with in the technology services space, a lot of these CEOs, they are part of peer groups, and
Mm,
even though they have these peer groups, they're not alone. They have a support network, but they're alone because they're running their own business. No one's going to come into your business, run your business for you, but you have a group of other people who are lifting, who are working out with you, who are getting strong with you. But then when it comes to getting it done, you have to go do it. And I think that's phenomenal that you went and did it and you kept it up. I mean, here we are in 2024 and you're still lifting, you're still in the best shape of your life, you're still eating right. You talked about all these components is what set it up
mm.
to have the best day ever. It was all the little things that we do. And I want to encourage our audience, look, if you take care of the little things, the big things take care of themselves. The little things are what? You get up every day, you eat right, you sleep right, you get your exercise in, you do your mindset work, you get the hardest task done in your business right away. And over time, the big thing that you want to accomplish, that big quarterly goal, the big annual goal, guess what? You've done it because of all the little steps you're taking. And if you listen to what Adam's saying, even in his routine, to eat right, to have the right support network, to lift right. He didn't even know he could do it, but on that day, he broke the record, the world record. And I want to encourage our audience, it's the same thing with you. As we coming up to the new year, you have to ask yourself, what are the little things I should be doing every single day so I can have the best year ever? And that leads us into this next point right here, because I think all of us want to know, hey, Adam, you don't do this as a full-time profession. You're not getting paid like LeBron James. You're not getting paid 50, $60 million a year like
I
Patrick
wish.
Mahomes, right? So what do you do for your day job? And this is where we come into the mergers acquisition space. So
Yeah.
where you and I and where Dave and all of us know it's the tech side of the M&A space.
Mhm.
Tell us a little bit more about the Corum Group that you're a part of. And number two, why is this such a great space to be in right now?
Yeah. So probably a little background would help. So I did the first 10 years of my career in corporate IT. It was in the IT department. And in 2009, because of the Great Recession, my department was eliminated and I had a tough decision to make. Well, I started a IT company. And at the time I was just doing break fix work. It was just me riding my motorcycle to people's houses and businesses. And over time, over the next 10 years, built up a managed services provider, an MSP, right? I provide IT services for outsourced IT services for small, medium-sized companies. And in 2018, although I was getting my body physically healthy, I was really struggling and mentally, emotionally. I was, as any entrepreneur knows, there's heavy weight on their shoulders. And I needed an out. I pulled the ripcord and I sold my company to a local competitor here in Las Vegas and joined them. I was with them for 6 years. And in that process, my life changed radically. I lost 80 pounds. I got out of a bad marriage. I got my nights and weekends back. I was able to start, competitively powerlifting. Actually, a month after I sold my business is when I was able to compete. And from there, I really reclaimed my happiness. My financial situation got better. And at the company I was with, Intelligent Technical Solutions, fantastic MSP, my partner and CEO Tom said, "Hey, Adam, you really are kind of the poster child for M&A and selling your business, what I can do. How would you feel about running that division?" And so I jumped at the chance. And so we stood up the M&A division. And over the next few years, we completed 11 additional transactions, eight of which I led directly. And all those individuals coming in to ITS, they in various ways they experienced similar changes to myself. Maybe not as dramatic as losing the 80 pounds that I had done, but I saw that improvement, and I felt, anyone that has sold their business or even knows of somebody that has sold their business, it is a extremely emotional journey. It's very draining. There's a lot involved there. And the way I equate it is it's almost like climbing Mount Everest. It is safe to say the most challenging and most difficult transaction of a person's business career. And having a Sherpa, somebody who's done that 100 times to help you climb Mount Everest, is an extremely helpful thing. They're not going to climb it for you. You still got to do it on your own. But having them lick their finger and stick it in the air, like, hey guys, the wind's blowing this way. Let's look out for this. Or, oh, hey, there's this crevasse over here. Or, hey, we got to make a jump for the summit right now. And I got a huge thrill out of guiding people through that process. And over the 6 years I was at ITS, one of the things I realized and came to see was at the end of the day, I only had one product I could offer to people, which was ITS. And I knew for myself, for my own career, I wanted to work with more people. And so ultimately, it led me to look to find a way to work with more people looking to sell their business. And that's what led me to Corum.
I think that's a interesting journey because the way I look at it, this is Danny, is that you did something and people around you said, you're amazing in this. And it allowed you to excel in your career. And you took something that was happening in your past and you made it into a positive. And I want to encourage our people out there to start a business is very difficult. And then to grow the
Mm,
business is very difficult. To succeed in the business is very difficult. And to find partners who understand it and work well with you is also very difficult. And along the way, you continue to develop who you are as an individual. Now, this is what I'm getting. You're not a quitter. You're going to keep pushing through. You're going to keep fighting. And every negative thing that happened turned into a positive thing that eventually led into you being in the best shape of your life, you going into a career path that you didn't even know you were going to be a part of that particular career path in the past. And now to where you are today, where this is probably the hottest thing in the market today. And when I say it's hot is because even during the pandemic, when things were going down, the managed services provider space kept going up.
mhm.
And I want to encourage the audience today, don't look at where you're at today and think, man, this is my life. Get that mindset paradigm shift and then start acting forward. And what you're going to see is that other people around you are going to say, man, you're amazing in this. You're awesome in this. And then you're going to say, hey, I'm pretty good in this as well. And that could be the next evolution of who you are as an individual, as a business leader, and this is what I'm going to encourage you guys. Look, it's not just about being a powerlifting champion. It's not just about being a business owner. It's not just about being a VP of mergers acquisition. It is about you taking where you're at and then finding ways to continue to move forward. And I want to encourage you guys to do that. This is a great story. If you meet Adam in person, you would never know because he doesn't act arrogant. He doesn't act in a way that's standoffish. He is very welcoming. He has a beautiful smile. He loves being around people. He just loves networking. And then when you start to get to know him, you're like, whoa, you did that? What? Are you serious? Because that's just the way he is. He's just going to help you understand that. Now, this leads me to just a unique question. And the question was during that journey, as you started discovering yourself and you start realizing that the M&A space was very prominent for you. It was going to be
Mhm.
good for you. Let me ask you, what attracts you to continue to excel in mergers and acquisition? Because one, you do have a history. You sold your business, right?
Yeah.
Number two, you understand there's stress. And for everyone out there that sold the business, I sold my first company. It is not easy. I think I'm worth this much money. I
Mhm.
think my business is worth this much. But the company that bought my company said, no, you're worth this much. I'm like, wait, are we looking at the same numbers? Because something just doesn't match. And it was very stressful. I think we were in it for like 8 to 9 months trying to get to that right number and not only get to the right number, the right philosophy, how we interact with customers and clients, the right systems, the right
Mhm.
communication so that it's an easy, seamless transition. It was a lot of work and it was very stressful. Every day I'm like, man, I don't even want to do this anymore. I think I'm just going to keep my company. This is too much. So what is it that keeps you current in this M&A space and why? Because it is very stressful. The business owners are stressed out. You have to look a business owner in their eyes and say, look, you're asking for the wrong amount. You need to be doing this. And they have to tell them your baby is not as good as you think it is, or your baby's amazing. Let's make it look even better. So what is it that gets you going when it comes to this?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a very common thing. Everybody thinks their baby's the prettiest, right? It's the thing that we birthed, we created, we poured all this time and energy into it. But, you know, along my own journey and having gone through it personally, one of the things I discovered is, if you go on Amazon or you go into any bookstore, there's probably hundreds, if not thousands, of books written on how to start up a company, right? How to operate a company. But what I have found is there is virtually nothing written on how to successfully exit a company. Now there's books, and even more specifically, there are books written on how to sell your company. But what is almost undiscussed entirely is the psychological, the mental, the emotional transition of separating yourself, right? As an entrepreneur, and Dan, you could probably tell me if I'm wrong here, but I bet a portion of your identity was interwoven with that business, right? And so separating that out is something that people don't even talk about. And especially for somebody going through the first time, they don't even know it's coming, right? And then they're just out there on their own. And I saw that time and time again, people struggling and navigating this challenge. And so I'm thinking to myself, like, I've been through this myself. And that also addressed another challenge that I saw in the industry. There's brokers, there's advisors, there's coaches, there's investment bankers out there. And the challenge is that so few of them have actually experienced that for themselves. They went to school to learn this stuff. And the challenge is that these sellers, these owners, are left to navigate the emotional and psychological journey alone. And ultimately that is where I saw something that was unique, and it really caught my eye and my heart. And I was like, oh, look, I want to get after this. And ultimately that's what pulled me to Corum. Is I looked at all the various options, and Corum does something unique. For this deal, they've got about 150 employees and about 35 of us deal makers. And the deal makers, they have a special requirement. The deal makers must have founded their own company, and they must have sold it. They must have gone through the fire of that journey themselves to bring empathy and that emotional and that experience to the forefront. And that's what excited me about joining Corman, really to help guide people through.
This is David, Adam. I'm so glad you brought that up. There's a sense of connectivity. You can relate. And as you
Mm.
said, for so many owners, it was their baby. It's what they knew. They put their heart, sweat, and tears into building it, and only to be able to say, how do I transition on? Or how do I move on? How do I understand how to make this work for me? And so obviously the M&A space can be very complex and challenging. Perhaps some of the most common challenges found are centered around compliance and security details. When we talk about selling a tech company, a TSA, that's not just as, like any other companies out there. You can't just say, I'm going to sell my franchise. I'm going to just sell my training company. This is different. It's a totally different space, so complex. The things that you have to get involved with, understanding how to even prepare them to be sold, or to be able to say, I want to merge with this company, but I only want this aspect of that business. There's so much that gets involved with it. What are some of the trends you're seeing in the market when it comes to TSAs, when you're talking about the service providers that may not understand this in the year that we're facing as we're coming through the COVID, as we're talking about the growth of generative AI and all that's taking place? What are the trends you're seeing in the market, and how does Quorum really help these organizations get prepared for that?
Yeah. So, in my work, just to give you an idea, I've now been at Corum for about a month. And when I was with ITS during this past year, on the subject of M&A, I talked to over 300 MSP owners, right, about selling their businesses. And so I feel like I had a pretty good swath of businesses of all size, everything from a million to 20 million plus. And everybody's biggest question is always, what's my MSP worth, right? And everybody wants to know, what's my business worth? And the challenge here is a lot of people have a kind of an incorrect frame of reference, right? They have maybe a peer group. We talked about peer groups earlier. Maybe a peer group member sold their business for like millions of dollars, right? They 10x of EBITDA, right? Well, that was their business, right? And it's always interesting because people say, well, he sold his for 10x. I should get 10x for mine, right? And so having a conversation, having an understanding of what your business is truly worth, your business is only worth what somebody is willing to pay,
Yeah.
right? That's the truth at the end of the day. And so you might get 10x, but you're going to have a really tough time finding that if it's really out of what we say out of market. So the first thing is getting a true sense of your valuation and having an understanding of what's realistic, right? The second thing is I see a trend very much, especially in the MSP community and just in tech in general, is that the hardest part of all sales or of all business is sales. That is the number one challenge. I don't care what industry it is, where you're at in the world. New client sales is the toughest aspect in all of business. MSP owners, like myself, 99% of us, we were career technicians, right? We're technical in nature, probably a bit introverted, right? And so we're not natural sales folks, right? And one of the challenges is MSPs they tend to be owner-led sales. They tend to be referral and word of mouth. And what that gets us to is about 2 to 3 million of revenue. And then we stop. And we've got to bring in outside sales. We've got to bring in marketing. We've got to start scaling those things. And that is exceptionally difficult. In those hundreds of conversations that I've had, the trend here that I saw was that people were struggling. They were unable to grow their company. And so instead of continuing to focus on how to fix that problem, they said, hey, you know what? Here's this shiny little object called M&A. I'm going to go out and I want to buy an MSP. Now, while on paper, it kind of makes sense, right? Hey, let's say I'm 2.5, 3 million of revenue. I'm going to go buy a $1 or $2 million MSP. What they miss is that now, instead of having a 2.5 or $3 million company that's not growing, you've just doubled your problem, right?
Yeah.
You've now got a second location
Mhm.
that you need to solve sales for, and you couldn't even solve it yourself. So, really, and until you've solved the problem of organic sales, new clients, right, and growing the clients you have, I implore people, put the brakes on any thought of acquiring other companies because you're really just going to make your life tough.
This is David again, Adam, and I'm going to tell you, I want to jump in on this because you make such a great point. It's not about saying to yourself, well, if I just go after the next thing or the next trend or the next thing, then I'm going to be okay. But
Mm,
the reality is, you might be setting yourself up for more of a headache. If your long-term goal is to grow by X, or if your long-term goal is to be positioned to be sold, you've got to be able to get advice on making sure you're prepared for that. And maybe it means pushing the pause button, halting the brakes, so to speak, to be able to align and fix what you're doing, to be able to position yourself for that growth. I can't go to the gym with you tomorrow, Adam. Yeah, you might let me work in the rotation, but I'm not going to be bench pressing 350. I'm not going to be jumping in on that. I may have to start off at just a bar, 225, 230, and I'm feeling great. I'm done. Okay. But don't expect me going in and just start bench pressing with all the other guys. It's not going to work like that. And I think that's exactly what Adam's saying. They're unique. They're uniquely positioned to understand where you are, assess your organization, align your goals to where you need to go and say, look, this is the steps you need to take in order to be more, let's say attractive to that organization, or this is what you need to do
mhm,
in order to acquire the right company so that you can grow. This is why it's so complex. So here's my question, Adam. When you're talking about advice, I'm not talking necessarily practical advice on leaders, entrepreneurs that say, hey, I want to get into the space that Adam's in. But what about
mhm,
advice as to what they should consider M&A as a part of their growth strategy? Because perhaps they may say, Adam, you're right. I need to push the brakes, pump the brakes. I've got to learn X, Y, Z. But how can they put M&A as a part of their growth strategy? Because maybe they are that company that says, I've been growing at 2 mil. I want to get to
mhm.
five. And I know based on where I am now, I can't get there. Any advice for companies that are maybe in that position that acknowledge that they're stuck, acknowledge they want the support, but any other advice that you might want to give them, if they say to themselves, hey, in this year coming up or in this new year, I want to make sure we're positioned to be able to do that.
Yeah, yeah. I think I can add two things there. So one is from an organizational perspective, right? If somebody has solved the sales problem, right? They're predictably able to bring in new accounts, right? They've got projections, they're able to sign new clients, they're getting those accounts in the door. And with their existing accounts, they're able to grow those, right? That's phenomenal, right? That alone is really going to set you apart from the rest of the crowd. So in that case, if you feel like, hey, you've got that handled and you've got a leader who's able to drive that, right? Kind of separate from the owner, then to me, it begins to make more sense to start pursuing a M&A, a merger and acquisition of maybe a smaller competitor. Just as a rule of thumb, what I recommend to people is, hey, if you're going to acquire somebody, do it in such a geography that you could either drive or fly to that location, spend a couple of hours, and then drive or fly home and sleep in your bed that night. Because the first year, you're probably going to make a lot of travel between those two. And so you want to be able to do it in such a way that's not going to burn you out. But just like anything else, it's something that can be done repeatedly over time. You're going to get better, right? In terms of how you get through the transaction, how you bring the two companies together, right? The culture and the people. I mean, at ITS, we did it 17 times total, and we were still making mistakes, but still getting better, still learning, and still improving. Now, in the second part of that question, I'll address kind of the person aspect, right? one of the reasons that mergers and acquisitions is so attractive today is, I don't know about you guys, but I go to so many of these conferences, I look around and I see two things: a lot of bald heads and gray hair, right? We have kind of an aging ownership population, myself included. And so these guys and gals are thinking about retirement, right? And so their plan is like, hey, how do I be successful myself? Very commonly, MSPs are often approached, called, text, emailed constantly every single day about people who are looking to buy. And what commonly happens is maybe they've got a peer group member or somebody that reaches out to them and provides an unsolicited offer to buy their company. And like, hey, this is, man, I've got a growing company. I'm going to make a couple $1 million from this. I think I'm going to actually go ahead. Now, the work that I'm doing now with, Corum and is at an investment bank is we want to say, hey, we want to get you the very highest value for your business, and we want to find the best fit. And that's tough to do if you're only talking to one company, right? That was, frankly, that was kind of a mistake that I made all the way back. But I feel like in the end, I made the right decision to sell my company to ITS. But what an investment bank does, like Quorum and working with myself, is we're going to create a competitive process that's going to drive up the value. We're going to bring multiple buyers to the table. And just like with anything else, when there's multiple buyers and there's a lot of attention, it's going to drive up the price that you get. And it also allows you to pick who's the best people, what's the best company at the end of the day, what's the best culture that my team is going to come into to make this a long-term success, right? And so that's a little bit of the difference that I'm able to bring to the table for my clients.
This is Danny. Adam, where were you when I sold my MSP, huh? Where were you? Look, it is a great time to be in right now. I'm gonna tell everybody in the audience today. I know that you think that this is a very difficult time, but it is a great time for an MSP. It's a great time for a technology service provider. It's a great time to learn. And as a business owner, you need to ask yourself, what is my long-term goal? Look, I'm getting up there. I'm 30 now, 40, I'm 40 now, 50 now, 50 now, 60 now, 69, 70. How much do you want to keep working? What do you need to do? Remember, we talked about the big picture is you may want to acquire another MSP or you may want to sell your MSP. But what are the little things you need to do? If you take care of the little things, the big things take care of themselves. What are the little things? Hey, I'm technical. I need to get better in sales. We'll start taking sales courses, taking sales training. Well, I'm not good at presenting my products to new clients in the vertical I'm going after. Well, start taking some communications and public speaking training. Get the little things done so that by the time you get to Adam and his team, they're going to look at you and they're looking at your portfolio and go, whoa, wow, you are different than most technology service owners we've met. You've done a lot of the little things already. Your books look great. The numbers look great. Your long-term contracts, you're not month to month anymore. You're 3-year contracts. You have repeat business. The existing customers I've seen every single year, you've increased their revenue and you've increased your MSA. All these things keep going up and up and up. What are you doing? I just do the little things and the big things take care of themselves. I want to encourage our audience on that. And this leads me to this next question. As someone who's excelled in sports and business and powerlifting, and if you guys want to know more about Adam's records, look, you can go to openpowerlifting.org, Adam Kerrigan, and you can look at all the records and all the PRs, the personal best. You can look at that and you can see and you can tell yourself, how do I stand against the best? How do I compare myself against the best? And then you look at the best, you say, okay, what do I need to do to start getting to become the best? And it's those little things. It's to eat right. It's to get up early. It's to have the great support network. It's to get someone who's going to slap you on your back really hard to make sure you hit those goals. So as you reflect on your professional career in M&A and
Mhm.
you look at your sports career, and I'm calling it a sports career because no matter what it takes dedication to do what you're doing. This is not a hobby you just do once every couple of months or once a year or run a marathon once every 6 years. This is something that you're living every single day. It's the little things. When you think about these things, what do you hope your legacy will be when you leave behind? What would it be that motivates you each day? Are you doing this because you want to leave a legacy? Are you doing this because you're helping other people to one day, if they've been in your situation, to say, look, if you're able to do it, I can do it. What is that legacy going to look like? And is it the same thing that motivates you every day?
Yeah, no, so I appreciate that. So on the professional side, um, what I hope to achieve is to guide people through transition, right? It's climbing that Mount Everest. It's looking out for the things that they don't know are coming. And it's really to just help them navigate that successfully. Um, that's my goal. In the personal side, the legacy that I hope to leave is for my children. I've got 6 of them, believe it or not, 4 boys, 2 girls. That's right. There you go. I, I grew up in a very kind of restrictive household. And so one of the things that I hope to leave for them as a legacy is to be open-minded, to question tradition, and to create your own path. And I feel like that's what I've done time and time again. I started in corporate IT, then I founded my own company. I've gone on to investment banking, and I'm not done. I'm only 44. But what I hope to really instill in my children is, hey, you can carve out your own path, you can be your own person, and you can find your tribe, you can find your training partners, whatever it is that you want to pursue.
This is David, and I think that's awesome. And to our listening audience out there, whether you have 1 or 6 future champions in your home, inspire them to be the best that they can be in whatever field goals that they may have. And what a great example you're setting before them and for your organization. Adam, as we close off here, where can our audience, where can our listeners, some of them are TSPs. Some of them have had their MSP since they started, or some of them may be in that phase where they're looking to acquire. Where can they learn more about you? Where can they learn about the work that you're doing and really get in touch with you?
Yeah, honestly, I think the best place is LinkedIn. Look me up. I've got my cell phone and my email on there. Feel free to reach out. But yeah, one last tidbit of recommendation. 2 things. One is, of those 300 people I talked to, I consistently saw the people that were in peer groups were performing better. They were growing better. It's having those connections to prevent having to reinvent the wheel, right? We can hear the stories of others. And second, a phenomenal book I'd recommend called Transitions by William Bridges. This specific book talks about the psychological change, and it's a phenomenal read. I highly recommend it for anybody who's looking to either go through a major life change or to sell your business.
That is awesome. I definitely put it here to look it up myself, talking about making sense of life's transitions. I want to thank Adam for joining us today. It's been an incredible conversation. Follow him on LinkedIn. Visit corumgroup.com, get an evaluation, get a grasp of how to understand the value of your organization and how to best position yourself if you're looking to acquire another organization. Whether you're looking to be sold, merge, or acquire, position yourself as a champion by working with an M&A deal maker, working with the champion of champions. That's what Adam is. That's what he does. Adam, thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing your inspiring journey, insights into leadership, M&A, what you've learned about yourself from powerlifting, what you're learning about yourself. Continue to learn about yourself in the field that you're in. We're so glad you could join us today.
Thanks, guys. Had a blast. Thank you.